So if you don't have a pneumatic or any kind of an impact wrench, you want to loosen the lug nuts before you jack the car up. Support the car with a jack stand, and I always leave the hydraulic jack underneath just in case. They did have a recall on the Harbor Freight jack stands. This one is not one of the ones. I did have a set that were, but just in case. So there's Das Boot. There's the boot. And I think what happened was that I just replaced my struts, and I think the strut was just in name only. I don't think it was working anymore, and it was just a spring. And I think what happens, I went over a really big bump. I went over a really big bump on the freeway, and I think the strut travel, the whole axle and everything traveled down further than it should. And I think it tore the boot. So the first thing that I have to do is I have to separate the ball joint. I think that's it right there. You have to take the cotter pin out above the nut, then take the nut off, and then separate those. Then next you have to take the cotter pin out of the axle shaft, and then take the axle nut off, which I think is a 32 millimeter. I'm going to do the axle nut first. That's a little big for 32. That's 30. It's not 32. 30 millimeter. But I'll have to get out my breaker bar. My torque wrench is enough to break it loose. That's so old school. Yep, there it goes. Perfect. I'm gonna get a little penetrating oil on there just to, even though it's not rust. If it was rusted, I would have taken a wire brush to it. You always do that. You don't want anything to happen to the threads. But this is like just greasy. So there's the ball joint. Here's the cotter pin right there. Make quick work of that, hopefully. There's that cotter pin. You always want to reuse them. I mean, you never want to reuse them. Well, there's not much clearance to get a wrench on there. Looking at this, the clearance, I think the only way I'm going to get clearance between the axle and the nut is to bang out the axle a little bit. So you never want to really bang on the end of on a threaded shaft, because you can mushroom it out. So what I'm going to do is back the nut out so it's flush. So there's the nut. Wow, look, the nut's made out of gold. I'm rich. So the nut's flush with the end of the axle, and you can bang on it. Got my persuader. Yeah, looks like I have enough. Looks like I have enough room now. Let me give it one more. See, there's a little bit more room now. I think it's a 22 millimeter nut. Room. I hate to have to do it. Maybe if I turn the wheel back. So what I had to do is I had to take both of the mounting bolts for the strut. Well, I left one in, and then I pried on the back. Pried on the back of the hub, and it popped the axle out a little bit more, and I was able to get the, see, I have the wrench on there now. I also tried, I was going to think, what I was thinking about doing was taking the, undoing the lower control arm. I actually took the sway bar nut off right there. But I thought there's got to be an easier way of doing that. So it is. You take the bolts out of the strut. Now that I got the wrench on there, I think I have to put everything back again, because there's nothing really holding the hub. And when I try to turn the wrench, it just pulls everything out. And I don't want the axle to come apart, because they will. This is my equalizer. It's what I slide on the end of my breaker bar. I thought I could slide it on the end of the wrench, but the wrench is too big. So what I have to use is my persuader. Well, I got the nut loose, and it was a persuader. Persuader works every time. So banging on that it's in like in a taper, you know, break the taper loose. If it's aluminum, you never want to do this. Well, here it's a ball joint tool, so I'm going to try this. I got it out, and the tool, this tool here, didn't work. It's too big. It was for my Impala, my 2003 Impala, and so the only way I got it out was banging on it. You just got to bang on it as hard as you can. Cast iron only, not aluminum. I got the shaft out. What will happen is the shaft will try to come apart. So you have to, I want to remove it as one piece if I can. This, which it's an axle puller, and it goes on, threads on to the end of a special slide hammer. And for like pulling my axle on the Impala, you need this. You can't pry it out. Can't pry the axle out. I'm going to try to pry this axle out. It looks like it comes out a lot easier. So I'm going to pry on the back of the tripod. See if I can get that to pry out. There it goes. I hope you saw that. Broke it loose. When you're prying on it or putting it back in, what you're doing is overcoming this snap ring. There's the bad boot. That's what we're going to be taking off. Replacing. What we have to do is first we have to break this band. And this just flips up. It just pulls out like that. There's the inside of the tripod. Do is clean these off as good as possible. And there's this clean these off as good as possible. Doesn't look like these come off. Looks like it's pressed on there or something. That's interesting. Oh, it's got needle bearings inside. Ah. I think the reason why this grease is gray is because it's, or tan, is because it's gotten water mixed in with it. I'd sure like to be able to clean all that off. Take the bearings out. This has a snap ring, so you can take this whole unit off the end. I want to clean this out good inside of this. Yeah, some of that grease is like it's dried. Anybody likes to play in grease, this is the ultimate. For what I understand, you're not supposed to use any kind of like cleaners or anything to clean the grease out. Apparently it can have residual leave residuals, whatever it is, carburetor cleaner or whatever. It can slowly that's probably pretty good. I'll clean it up a little bit more though. Now here comes the sun. It's gonna get hot out here. It already is. Instant shade. And that, I was expecting the clip to go flying somewhere and I'd lose it, but it didn't. So then you got to pull this. Oh, well, that's not good. See if there's one on the other side. That's interesting. I don't know if you can see this or not, but looks like some kind of a steak. It's like steak. It's something like some kind of a. It's not a pin, but like a. I think that's what's holding it on the shaft. They have that and a snap ring. I think these are they're kind of alignment pins or something. Well, it's really getting hot out here, and I'm really glad I put up this this pop-up canopy. It really gives me some nice shade. It's probably about 20 degrees cooler, and there's a breeze too, although the breeze is kind of warm. But I think what I have to do is I think it has to be forced off the end. I've been hitting it with this brass driver, so I'm going to continue doing that right now. We also get a lot of helicopters. Oh, there he goes. We're right down the street from a hospital. I think they're medical transport. Something else. Don't forget to. I marked a line with a. I have a carbide scribe. Where is it? I have a carbide scribe, and what I did is I marked a line right here and right here, so it goes back approximately the same way as it came off. It's very important. It's almost off. I don't know why they have a clip holding this on. So there's the tripod. And no matter what they say, I think I'm going to clean this with carburetor cleaner since I can't get these. Since I can't get these bearings off. I think I'm going to clean it with carburetor cleaner because it's gonna evaporate anything. Let's leave it in the sun. It will evaporate all the carburetor cleaner off. I think it's better to risk that than leave all this old grease in there that's been contaminated with water. Yeah, keep sliding them back and forth because there's grease inside. And I'll let you know in 5 or 6 years whether I had CV joint failure from this. Also on the bearings, I don't know if you can see it. See, it says 04 right there. That apparently means something. I forgot what it does. That's something with the transmission, the drive shaft. They're like 01, 02, 03, and 04. Okay, I think they're pretty well clean. So now I'm going to sit them out in the sun. Oh, wait a minute. Let them sit in the sun and dry. Oh, now this is really the fun part. You get to slide this off. See, I'm pretty sure that this is sort of tan color because it's mixed with water. So now we got to take the other part of the broken Das boot. Clean this with some carburetor cleaner too. You could drink out of that. It's so clean now. They make a nice cup, right? So this is part of the old boot, Das boot. So I have the new boot. It's a new boot. There's the packet of grease. Oh, they even have a new clip, E-clip, and a snap ring. There's both of the bands. So I guess the clip on first. Then the boot. And the other clip. And the other clip. It's completely clean and dry. I had to dry it with actually what I did is there was still some residual the tan colored grease, which is contaminated grease. I think what I did is better than leaving that on there. And I ended up having to I squirted it with gunk, the original gunk, and washed it up, rinsed it off, and then I dried it. I tried drying it in the sun, and I shook it and water was coming out. And so what I ended up doing was taking a heat gun and drying it out. So now it's completely dry, and I know I'm going to get probably some bad reaction from that, but I think that's the only way that this would. I don't think leaving that contaminated grease on there was a good idea. So now we got to match up, find the mark on here. So we put the boot on, we put the clamps on. I don't know how these clamps work. Ah, there it is, I think. Yep. Okay, I found the mark. So, and another thing, I don't know if you can put these, which end you can go on, so that's another reason, which end put on this way or this way. And that's another good reason to mark it. Oh, hit the bearings. So now I gotta drive the end of this on. Got the alignment marks lined up. That's probably good. Get my snap ring pliers. Oops. Oh wow, it's too big. So I'll have to put the original one back on. Look at look at that. This is the one they gave me, and this is the one that was on there. Thanks. I think I'll sit down to do this. That's another thing, you know, when you bring the axle over here to take it apart, you've been laying on the ground. Go in and wash your arms off. Make sure you're not carrying any dirt and sand from laying on the ground. So that looks good. Yeah, it's in there. Before I put the grease in there, I want to make sure everything goes back together right. Yeah, I guess that's so this is the fun part number 2, the grease. Make sure you get grease down in everything, in every place you can. And you're just supposed to squirt the rest in the inside the boot. You're supposed to pull this down tight like that. Then fold it across. Or maybe around again. Wow, that's weird. Hmm. Not sure how these rings are, the rings supposed to go on. Oh damn! Now it's on there now. You have the prongs that grab it and pull it, cinch it together. Which I have one of those. I mean, if they sent that, that would have been nice. think it's on there good. Yeah, it's good. So I'll continue with the putting the rest of the grease in there. Say it's a special grease. Not supposed to mix any other grease in there if you're low. That's probably pretty good. Then I'm going to keep the snap ring on there. The other one looks smaller or something. Or looks bigger. Well, not smaller. I don't even think it would go on there. They give me too big of a E-clip and too small of a snap ring. Okay. All that grease stays down in there. Yeah. The boot will snap on. Did you hear that? And the thing is, there's no clip. There's no clip holding the axle on there together. Some have a retaining clip right around the inside. This you can actually pull. You can actually pull it apart, so you have to be careful. Why they don't have like a hose clamp on here is because the part where the screw is, that's rotating. That few grams could turn into like a half a pound. I won't even go around it. I wonder if I should do that. Nah. I think that just snaps off. I guess it's just to keep it from popping over the ridge. So I cut it off. I think what it is this pops into a ridge, and it's not supposed to be really tight, it's just supposed to keep it from sliding off the ridge. It's kind of weird. I kind of wish it was like the one that was on there. Well, we'll see. See how it does. Now to put it back on the car. It's any better than a new boot. So now I have to put the axle back in. Oh, I should clean up all the old grease. Oh yeah. Oh, there's a whole bunch of grease that was splashed around in there. So now what I don't want to do is tear the boot putting it back in. Oh. Point two. Getting that, you getting the wrench on there and tighten it down before you get everything put back together. And as you're tightening the ball joint, since the top of the ball joint comes up, there's a space to get your wrench out. It gets smaller and smaller, so I finally tightened it up with just the open end part of the wrench. But I think I got it tight enough. Cotter pins in.